FrightFest, a horror festival that takes place in London, often featuring some of the most notable horror films for the years to come, is going on this weekend. I had a chance to preview a quartet of these films. Normally, I try to focus on films that are already out and readily available for the masses, but here are a few advanced reviews of horrors to come. When the films do end up being released, I promise to repost these reviews to remind you guys about these films. So here goes my look at what FrightFest 2025 has to offer for us this year. NOSEEUMS is premiering at London's FrightFest 2025 from Torchlight Studios and Odin's Eye Entertainment. It's directed by Raven Carter and written by Raven Carter, Jason Michael Anthony, and Hendreck Joseph. Ember, played by Aliga Burt, is a promising young anthropology student who recently broke up with her boyfriend. In order to forget her ex, she goes on a girls' getaway weekend at a lake house. But the nightmarish history surrounding the house seems to have a special connection to Ember and her own foggy past. NOSEEUMS is steeped in metaphor. Sometimes this metaphor is veiled, other times not so much. The film feels like it has a whole lot of things to say about race, culture, and America's not-so-great history. You see, Ember is a young black woman struggling with fitting into the modern world. At the beginning of the film, Ember has a short debate with her teacher involving privilege, opportunity, and systematic obstacles. Of course, it's Craven 101 that if something is talked about in a classroom in a movie, that means it's going to be one of the main themes. This is compounded with the fact that Ember was dating a white dude and has found herself friends with his friend set, a pair of white gals and an Asian gal as besties. Ember's best black friend dislikes it that Ember is going on this girls' weekend with her white friends, once again highlighting Ember's conflicted racial issues. As a story that examines these complex feelings about race, NOSEEUMS is surprisingly ripe with thematic heft. Even the title, NOSEEUMS, can be seen as a metaphor for the inner conflict, the small prejudices, and outright racism that Emma deals with on a daily basis, yet chooses not to deal with them as she feels they are inconsequential, like small bugs buzzing around her head. That's good and deep stuff, and even as a white dude, I found myself compelled by this conflict and concerned for Ember as a character. Aliga Burt is solid as Ember. She has an annoying habit of biting her lip and does it in pretty much every scene. While it may convey awkwardness, self-consciousness, and may sometimes even be kind of cute, it's distracting when she does it every time she's on screen. And she's on screen a lot. Burt is a good actress, conveying a lot of difficult emotions, though once I noticed this tendency, I couldn't unnotice it. The major problem is, and this is often a problem with movies with this heavy a social message, is that the message outweighs the horror, and that's definitely the case with NOSEEUMS. It's as if the filmmaker and her co-writers were so distracted with communicating this interesting bunch of issues Ember has to face that they forgot to make it all consistently scary. Director-co-writer Raven Carter does pepper in a few scenes that are legitimately stylized and sometimes palpably frightening, specifically some of the nightmare flashback sequences of real racial violence, but these are few and far between. Additionally, NOSEEUMS wraps up on a strange note with a lighthearted ending that not only undercuts the horror and drama that just occurred, but honestly should leave a bad taste in the mouths of most people leaving this movie. Had the horror been as prevalent as the message, I think it would have liked NOSEEUMS a whole lot more. 213 Bones is premiering at London's FrightFest 2025 from Overcast. It's directed by Jeffrey Primm and written by Dominic, Arcelin, and Jeffrey Primm. A group of forensic anthropology students are given an assignment to assemble and find the method of murder for a fake set of bones set out for them by their teacher, Mr. Kelly, played by Colin Egglesfield. But as these budding investigators try to crack the case, a masked serial killer is killing members of their class and inserting real bones into their investigation. 213 Bones is a perfectly decent little whodunit in the vein of Scream, minus the recognizable actors playing the part of the 10 Little Indians. The film is a nicely structured mystery, enticing you to guess who the killer is and questioning everyone until the end. For the most part, the film does a decent job of keeping its killer under wraps until the mask comes off. The main problem with 213 Bones is that besides the refreshing inclusion of summer school's Dean Cameron, that's right, Chainsaw from Chainsaw and Dave, who so much deserves their own movie, besides Cameron, the rest of this cast of breakfast clubbers are rather bland and unremarkable. Sure, they all give convincing performances, but the real reason these whodunits work so well, like I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, and even the more upper crust Knives Out series, is because they have recognizable characters playing most of the roles. Take away these notable faces, and the deaths become interchangeable and downright bland. Sure, no-namers dying over and again work in slasher films like Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw, and Halloween, but those films have the killer as the touchstone. When the masked killer is just someone in a mask and the victims are all little developed cliches, it's hard to give a fig. And unfortunately, that's what happens here. It becomes a race to the end and a challenge to guess the killer, and less of a story worth investing in because you have previous investments in the faces getting cacked, or the killer who's been around for 5 installments beforehand. Sadly, that's the case for 213 Bones. On a side note, seeing Dean Cameron in the recent and excellent found footage, The Making of the Patterson Project film, and then this one, simply wants to make me lead the charge for a modern-day Chainsaw and Dave film, where a pair of old horror fans decide to reunite and take a trip to see the site where the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was filmed, and maybe run into a family of lunatics and have to utilize their horror know-how to get them out of this predicament. Cameron shows he still has his quirky chops, and while it looks like Gary Riley has given up acting, it would be great to see the original actor who played Dave for the role. Oh well, I guess a guy can dream. Back to 213 Bones, though I'm not sure why this film is set in the early 90s, I did enjoy the attention to cultural detail from that era. The girls have big and really bad hairstyles, the outfits are ripped right from the era. There is even a decent amount of late 80s, early 90s songs on the soundtrack from Soundgarden, Bananarama, Duran Duran, and many others. I imagine the filmmakers simply put the songs in without having the rights, since this is a festival film, so when it is released, those songs might not make the final cut, but it did add to the authenticity of the time. The reveal is okay. The final revelation as to who the killer is simply bored down to who is left, and while I feel the identity of the killer was somewhat of a letdown, it does end up being an exciting ending nevertheless. 213 Bones is a capable little whodunit, though it lacks the spice that makes it a big league slasher mystery. Your Host is premiering at London's FrightFest 2025 from Benacus Entertainment and RNF Productions. It's directed by D.W. Medoff and written by Joey Miller. 4 20-somethings are abducted from a vacation home and find themselves chained to a wall and forced to play a sadistic game of death, all brought to you by a maniac known as Your Host, played by Jackie Earle Haley. Your Host is a mean-spirited film that one can't help but compare to the Saw series, as it basically has the same premise: a man inflicting revenge upon a world he feels has shunned him. While Saw has the subtle and soft-spoken John Kramer, played by Tobin Bell, Your Host has a more bombastic tone, and that's the main thing that sets the two films apart. While this is not usually the type of film I would seek out, the one redeeming factor to all of this carnage, and there's a lot of it, is the performance by Jackie Earle Haley. Haley is one of those actors that just oozes humanity. Watch any film he's in, his stare is filled with heartache and pain. His tragic turn in Little Children comes to mind, and even in an over-the-top film like Watchmen, allowed Haley to shine. I mean, how is Rorschach not the most sympathetic character in that entire film? Here, Haley has the same kind of wide-eyed wonder and excitement, like a kid playing with his favorite toys, though it's clear the road that has brought him to this torture dungeon of horrors is filled with grief and torment. Still, because this maniacal killer, which reminded me a whole lot of Bill Moseley's Chop Top from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, because the maniacal killer is being played by Haley, that humanity shines through, and it's the best part of Your Host. I'm curious how the messaging in Your Host is going to play out to filmgoers. It makes a firm statement about the Me Too movement and how it can be twisted in this complex and often cruel world. Despite the gore, the film does go to some ugly places, and I respect it for taking this kind of stance in the current cultural climate. Still, this is a film that's going to be divisive simply because it broaches a very sensitive topic. But I have to say, Your Host commits to the bit all the way through, and that's ballsy. The gore is going to be a turn on or turn off, depending on your tolerance for that sort of thing. And while I'm no prude to the gore, I must admit I was floored a time or two at the bloodfest on display in Your Host. There's one particular kill that is wonderfully played out and had me wincing the entire way through. At the same time, these 4 contestants and the way they argue and treat one another makes you wonder why the hell they are all together in the first place. But I think that's the point of the film, that no one is without sin and that sin needs to be punished. Your Host is not going to be for everyone. It definitely is carrying on in Saw's absence, and Healy's performance really elevates the entire thing. His rage and grief are palpable and makes the entire twisted show worth checking out. Finally, we have Pig Hill. It's premiering at London's FrightFest 2025 from Concourse and Empty Jug Productions. It's directed by Kevin Lewis and written by Jarrod Burris, based on the novel by Nancy Williams. Carrie, played by Rainey Qualley, recently seen in The Devil and the Daylong Brothers, and sister of Margaret and daughter of Andy McDowell, has heard legends of the pig people that are supposed to live in the dark forests around Pig Hill since she was a kid. As young women continue to go missing in the area, Carrie plans to write a book about the strange local legend. Carrie's work gets her closer to the truth, but the legend proves to be more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Just check Tubi. The killer in a pig mask is a concept that is a dime a dozen these days. But Pig Hill is definitely the gnarliest of all of the pig-headed killer flicks. This is one brutal movie. From the director of the twistedly fun Willy's Wonderland, Kevin Lewis delivers a film that doesn't pull its punches. This pig-headed killer, known as Swill, is perverse, gross, and monstrous as he bashes, tears, and fucks anything in his filthy path. But the thing is, Pig Hill isn't your typical exploitative, gross-out horror film. It's well acted, especially from lead Rainey Qualley, who has a strangely low voice, but overflows with beauty, sensuality, and that same it factor her sister Margaret does. Helping her out is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen's Shane West, who plays a likable guy who pops into Carrie's life just in time for him to be the sidekick to her investigative journalism. And Shiloh Fernandez, who was in 2013's Evil Dead, is good as Carrie's overprotective brother, offering up some complex emotional heft to Carrie's deep dive into piggy horror. This film also has Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3's Leatherface, R.A. Mihailoff, as a local pig farmer, which I feel was a nice touch since pig-headed killers have always felt derivative of TCM, most likely because of the original swine-masked slasher and Texas Chainsaw knockoff, Motel Hell. What I really liked about Pig Hill is the way it approaches the local legend aspect of the terrifying goings-on. Carrie is exploring all of the possibilities of the horrors at Pig Hill, even the most extreme and crazy ones like half-human, half-pig hybrids and alien abductions. It gives a bit more gravitas to the threat when you and the lead are murky about exactly what it is lurking in the dark and snorting. Pig Hill unfolds this fascinating mystery well, keeping you guessing for most of the film as to what really is going on. And what is going on is creepy as all get out. Some will be downright skeeved to hell and back by how Pig Hill plays out. Director Lewis gives the whole film this unreal quality by bathing scenes in blues, reds, and light greens, which amps up the more cerebral twists and turns going on. Some of these scenes, especially told through hallucination and dreams, are uncomfortably surreal. There are a few clunky lines and an overlong villain monologue towards the end that almost undercuts the intensity, but this is one to watch out for. Prepare yourself for some nice, goppy, sloppy gore if you plan on visiting Pig Hill. Well, there are 4 films that are going to be at this year's FrightFest 2027 in UK. Again, I will be reposting these reviews when they finally are available to be watched by the masses. Which one of these interests you the most? And also, what do you think of my Chainsaw and Dave pitch? Honestly, I would pay good money to see that one. Anyway, let me know the answers to these questions and more down in the comments. Please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're